Hello, my name is Dr. Brian Walker, and I am the Associate Professor of Trumpet at the University of North Texas. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the 2025 TMEA All-State Etudes for Trumpet. As the selector of these etudes, I hope my comments not only give insight to the selection of these etudes, but help in the preparation and eventual performance of these etudes. To get started, I would like to make some general comments about successful preparation methods and some pitfalls I've noticed in my 20 plus years of working with high school trumpet players in Texas throughout this process. First and foremost, fundamentals are the vehicle that brings a trumpet player success. Focusing practice time on just the etudes and nothing else will not bring a player the progress and consistency required for success in this audition process. First, it's important that a player has an effective, consistent warm-up that takes no more than 10 to 15 minutes maximum and allows them to perform all skills needed to play these etudes. It is important to mention that trumpet players often confuse warming up with fundamental practice. It should never take you an hour to warm up. However, this is an appropriate amount of time for fundamental practice daily. Which fundamental skills should one practice on daily? The first is tone or sound. The second is flexibility. The third is articulation. And the fourth is technique. I will also say those are listed in the order of importance for me personally to focus on each day. If I have limited time to practice, I will prioritize those things in that order. In my opinion, 50% or more of one's practice time should be spent on fundamental work in relation to literature practice, or in this case, etude practice. These comments are the ones I think apply to all of the etudes. 1. Practice in chunks. A measure at a time at most. Play at a tempo you can successfully play with accuracy, no matter how slow, and repeat it multiple times. Periodically connect the chunks to evaluate your progress. 2. In the past, I've at times encountered extremely talented trumpet students who learn the etudes quickly, and since they are left with a large amount of development time to refine the etudes, they end up playing totally inappropriate tempos with overly complicated dynamics and incorporate unusual rubato too often to try to what I call out-musicality the competition. My humble advice is this: try to think about your tempo, dynamics, and rubato like seasoning on food. These things require balance. In each situation, or in this case each etude, it is unique. Flavor is important, but if you over-season your etude, no one will want to digest it. If you find yourself with extra time in your etude preparation, what I would encourage you to do is to strengthen the fundamental areas I mentioned before and review the etudes slowly. 3. Breathing. Please phrase and breathe. It is very important to mention in these etudes. If you cannot make the 12 to 16 bar phrases, which is normal, then stop and breathe. I would discourage removing a note in a passage for a breath. Rather, I would just stop, breathe, and then continue on with the passage. There are several moments in these 3 etudes where that may be the case for you. I personally have no issue with a reasonable pause for a breath. 4. Practice all passages in these etudes as many ways as you possibly can. Be creative. Use different articulations. If something is tongued, like Brant 1, then learn to slur the whole thing, or change the rhythms. This will give you a different perspective on a pattern or a sequence of notes. Speaking of Brant 1, you will find that the editor provided you some ideas at the bottom of the page for practice. Use these ideas. Use them in all the etudes. First, these videos are only an example and a reference to get you started. They are not an absolute referendum on how these etudes should be played. Second, to pull the curtains back a little bit on these recordings, I spent about 7 to 10 days preparing these etudes. That was the amount of time I was allowed. So keep that in mind as well. If I were allowed 3 to 4 months to only focus on these etudes, I would likely develop some musical ideas further, maybe use a different tempo, or approach things in a different way. I've used this book in my studios at Tarleton State and now UNT. I don't play these etudes like I used to 10 years ago. And I certainly hope I don't play them the same way 10 years from now. So I encourage you to think about that as you listen to these. Third, it's important to note that when mastering recordings and video and uploading to YouTube, dynamics often get lost in that process. And fourth, I always encourage students to investigate and find other recordings of etudes. There will be many created this year. For me, I would like you to keep an eye out for Kyle Sherman's recording. He is a colleague of mine at UNT and the principal trumpet of the Fort Worth Symphony. Houghton Horns on YouTube always provides these recordings for free, and they're always excellent. First, learn this in 3 to start slowly. Be very careful to follow the slurs indicated. This should be in a 1 or a waltz feel, even if you're going slow and subdividing. 2. Note lengths should not be choppy or clipped. Likewise, they should be light and not overly connected either. 3. Bars 7 and 15, and similar bars, have this awkward skip of a ninth from low E to F sharp. Practice this skip daily. I spent a great deal of time trying to get this as smooth as possible for these recordings. Good luck. One way to approach it is by starting on E, and instead of going all the way up to F sharp, go just a third to G sharp, then a fourth to A, and then a fifth to B, and continue until you get closer to that skip. This should make this feel closer together. Another option is to finger the low E with third valve. That may improve the response of that skip. So low, up to F sharp. 4. There are other places you can use alternate fingerings in this etude. Generally speaking, you can experiment with using third valve to finger low E's and A's found throughout the etude. This could make technical passages easier. 5. The molto ritardando found in measure 47, I like to start a little bit earlier than written. 6. As mentioned before, breathing can be tricky in these etudes. Your 3 options are to take quick catch breaths throughout, try to play these long phrases in one breath, or stop at harmonic moments and phrase and breathe, and then move on with the etude. I would not leave out notes. This one starts in the middle of the etude, where a long lyrical section begins. This is also in a one feel or a waltz feel, like the prior etude, to facilitate that move back and forth from duple to triple feel. To improve the ability to go back and forth from that triple to duple feel, one might practice articulation patterns to improve comfort in this area. Triplets to sixteenths, back and forth. I would avoid excessive rubato in this etude. This is to keep the rhythm intact. Most rubato is built into the section already. I only add a bit at the ends of long phrases. The second half of this excerpt is fun. It should flow nicely. It's very technical. It is a slur 2, tongue 2 pattern over 3. So you have to have that duple against triple feeling as before. Bring it out. Whenever you get it up to tempo, it should be possible to complete the whole technical section in one breath. You must play with exact rhythm. It is very easy to compress 16th notes and cheat dotted quarter notes. I found it really easy to do. Be very careful. Breathe after dotted quarter notes in the outer section. There are long stretches of 8th to 16th note passages with no spot to breathe. If you cannot catch a quick enough breath between where you do not change the rhythm, then just stop and breathe, and then continue with the technical passage. Again, I would not leave out notes to facilitate a breath. Consistent articulations is the name of the game in this etude. Because the rhythm is so monotonous, it is very easy to hear inconsistencies in articulation. It is also very easy to hear fluctuations in tempo. I personally found these things to be difficult when recording this. Also be sure that your sound does not change when performing arpeggios. I hope you found these comments and performances helpful. I wish you good luck on your preparation. Remember to be kind to yourself and others. Competition can be a very positive experience and help you grow as a musician, but only if you approach it in the proper way. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and remember to practice slowly.